Right, we're on the questions, and I'm going to let Margaret have a little bit of a break. Do you want to sit here, Margaret? Because there's the microphone there you can share with Bobby. So I'm going to start with you, Bobby, because you've had a bit of a rest, all right? Okay, so first question. Does the fact that you are legally blind, did that work as a negative, or was it inspiration for you?
Thanks. I had never really crossed my mind, to be honest. I never thought of it as a negative, so I guess that kind of answers the question. It never crossed my mind that it could be a negative thing. It kind of, I actually can't remember the minute that I found out that I was legally blind. I never really thought of it like that's how insignificant it is to me. I just always thought of myself as me. So whenever I do think about that I'm legally blind, it kind of is just like a, oh, okay, cool, and then just kind of move on. So it was never a negative thing, but it was also never like an inspirational thing either. I just see it as part of me. So it was never negative, but it wasn't really inspiration either. If that makes sense.
I think so, yeah, thank you. Margaret, is there any plan in the pipeline to allow children with learning difficulties like ADD, ADHD or ASD an exemption from Irish? Having serious problems with ADD child and Irish impacting on his self-esteem and self-confidence. Surely a child who is struggling with their first language, English, should not be forced to learn a language that is not used at home. If there are no current plans, please start a plan.
Okay, where to start with that? I do know that the Department of Education are actually reviewing Irish exemptions at the moment. The NCCA doesn't have a say in that, so if they say that we have to write, for example, a level 2 short course as Gaeilge, then we would do that. Again, send me the emails. I'll pass them on to the Department of Education. I'm more than happy to do that. And other than that, I would say talk to the teachers in the school and just ask them to keep filling in the exemption applications. I know sometimes you can wear down the person in the office. I do agree it is very, very difficult, but we are constrained with it at the moment.
Thank you. Bobby, did you have a visiting teacher? And if so, how was it?
Yes, I did have one. I think for all of school, if not, I think the only year I didn't have one was my very first year. And it was good. She came every few months and she just review everything, any assistive technology that I needed. We'd kind of go through her to get it. She put us in touch with companies that provided those technologies, and she also, when I was in 4th and 5th year, the older years in school, she put me in touch with a few other visually impaired girls that were also sitting the Leaving Cert. So yeah, it was very beneficial, but she did, for me anyway, in my case, she was sporadic. She didn't come all the time, but that was just my case.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, can my daughter follow these programmes outside of school with me?
The way the programs work is that you will be working with the teacher to do it. So you can absolutely follow it outside the school. However, for the authentic recognition of learning, the gathering evidence would really have to take place in school. So because it's based on teacher professional judgment. So if you take a photograph, the teacher can't stand by. If an inspector came in and asked, can I see that portfolio? The teacher would have to say, well, actually, I can't stand over that one. So there is a bit of back and forth there, but really to build up to the point of portfolio, the work should be taking place at home. I used to send homework home with my students where they had to make mum and dad a cup of tea, or they had to make mum and dad a sandwich. So that's where you can be doing it at home. As I said, it's very much at that IEP stage. Make sure that your voice is heard then, and that's where you have your say and your input into the programme, and that's where you can make that kind of plan of action as to what's school-based and what's home-based as well.
Thank you, Margaret. Bobby, what was the hardest thing for you at school?
Good question. Hardest thing for me was, to be honest, probably the fact that I lost all my friends in 3rd year. Honestly, that was a really, really hard time for me, because I think, like, I'm not a parent of someone with a disability. I have one, so I think for me, I always expected the difficulties with like learning and stuff like that. Like I kind of went into classes being like, okay, this might be hard. I mean, yes, there were times that I was taken aback about how hard it was, and studying for the Leaving Cert was like literally physically painful. So that was difficult, but that didn't really like hurt, if that makes sense. Like the emotional strain of literally losing all my friends in the space of a month for no reason at the time, like that was incredibly difficult. But that happens to like so many people in school. It's unfortunately it's a very normal thing for teenagers to have to go through. So for me that was the hardest bit, but also studying and being in pain doing that, because I'd have to lean on one side so I can see out of the one eye that actually works. Just little things like that did make that painful, but the hardest thing was losing the friends.
Thank you. Margaret, do you have any guidance on completing an IEP?
First of all, I'm going to say that the new guidelines are actually directing schools now towards using the student support profiles. So I would contact NEPS and I would ask them for guidance on that. They have some really good resources up on the website to explain how you can go through that process. I'm presuming that's...
Have people heard of NEPS? No, so some people haven't. So do you want
So NEPS, they're a part of the Department of Education, and they are our National Education Psychological Support Service. So they are the people that schools contact when we are looking for support in getting a diagnosis or supporting a child once they have a diagnosis. All of the templates and formats that are recommended to us, our teachers, are now all the NEPS ones. So teachers should be going to the website and using all of their information as well. If you were asking about how you complete it as a parent with the school, it is about making sure that you're informed when there is a meeting, knowing in advance if other people are coming to the meeting. So if you go into a room and you think it's just going to be you and teacher, and then you find the OT, the psychologist, the speech and language therapist, that can be very, very daunting, and you may not have prepared questions for those people. So as a parent, it's just making sure that in advance you know who's going to be there, you know what the teacher is planning on talking about, and you have a little bit of communication before and after the meeting to make sure that you are completely comfortable with what has been said and agreed upon. I am hoping that answers it.
Thank you. Bobby, who or what was the most help to you when you were in school?
Definitely my resource teachers. 100%. There were times in school where, like, yes, the emotional strain of, as I said, losing the friends was really difficult. But for me, the most important people during that time were my friends outside of school and my family. So within school, throughout the whole education process, the resource teachers were 100%. If they hadn't have been there for me, I don't know, like, I genuinely actually don't know what I would have done. Because even if I just needed to talk about something that wasn't, because sometimes it gets exhausting always talking about, like, oh, my eyes and how am I feeling about it and everything like that. Sometimes I just want to talk about, like, the X Factor or something, just something so, like, a break from it all. They'd be able to do that for me as well. So my SNAs and the resource teachers, 100%. If I didn't have them, I don't know what I would have done.
Thank you. Margaret, do all secondary schools have to offer L1 and L2? Are L1 and L2 adaptable to eye gaze and technology?
Okay, so the first part of that is that they are available to all schools. Nothing says they're compulsory. Nothing about the junior cycle framework says anything is compulsory, so that includes short courses as well. What the guidelines in relation to the new allocation of hours says that you have to provide the curriculum and the supports that best meet the need of your students. So it depends on how you as a parent and schools interpret that. I interpret that as if you have a child in your school who should be doing level 1 or level 2, then the school has a moral obligation to be giving it. Now, that's my NCCA hat completely coming off as I say that. But I do think then it's conversations for you to have with your CNO and have the conversations with the school before you go in. I remember when we first started the level 2 learning programs, I'd already bought into them because I had struggled for years before that. But a parent who was very informed was coming into the school and she said, I'm sending my son here regardless of what you say, so you better have the level 2 learning programs. Because she already knew that this is what was going to meet the needs of her student. So again, it's back to student voice and student strength, and don't allow schools use it as a soft barrier to send them around the corner. And again, that's completely off the NCCA hat.
And does everybody here know what a CNO is? Everybody does. Okay. If there's anybody here who doesn't, they're special education needs officers, and they're provided by the National Council for Special Education. And there's a stand out there that the National Council for Special Education, NCSE, are there, and they will have a lot of information that's really important for you if you don't know what a CNO is, because that's how you access resources for your children. So please do visit that stand. It's a very important service.
And they are the service who come in and they review the resources that are in the school as well. So they are a linchpin between both. And they are, in all my experiences with CNOs, they've always been very, very supportive of the parent, the child and the school. So if you haven't made links, just do have a look for them. The second part of that question, Anya?
Oh, I've put it away. What is it? It was about eye gaze technology, yeah.
Yep, so the level 1 learning programs are actually written to use whatever technologies, communication devices, whatever it is that your child is using, the school can work with that with the level 1 learning programs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's slightly different for both programs. So if I go to the level 2 learning programs, the guidelines for that actually say that the majority of that, so we're talking mainstream school, could be taught within mainstream classes. And I know JCT at the moment have been doing an excellent job of actually showing examples of how level 2 learning programs can be aligned with subject learning outcomes. Now, we're not saying that it can all be done in classes. That isn't feasible. So those would be done through withdrawal or small groups. You might decide that where a student who's doing level 2 learning programs in mainstream classes, you might decide that you'd like to do some co-teaching or team teaching in that aspect as well. That's it in general. It really is. It's the context of your school, how many resources you have. Going back to when I did it, so for the first cycle, I had 3 students doing the level 2 learning programs. We did all of our short courses down in the resource room because it's not fair to ask a mainstream teacher to do them in the class, is my personal opinion. We did, I'm going to say 60% of the learning outcomes in mainstream, and it was something we were very slowly building up the number. Our maths department took on all of the numeracy. Our English department took on a majority of the communication and literacy, and the others we were just trying to find that. No, that's okay. We were just trying to find our own way. I know when we went into the second cycle, teachers had actually then begun looking at the JCT examples for their own subjects, and teachers were actually putting their hand up saying, actually, I can take responsibility for that learning outcome in living in the community through my woodwork class, because they were learning about different manufacturers and different things, and they were doing trips out. So it's very context, but you absolutely can. The level 1 learning programs are more difficult. We only had one mainstream school in the trial. She was absolutely amazing. You can see how they brought their TY students into it. But from my experience in the year, and bearing in mind we were trialing it, so all the teachers were just learning about the program and trying to trial a 3-year program in a year for us. 80% of that would have been done in small group withdrawal. Mainstream teachers, I know the mainstream art teacher brought Grace into the art class, but then also came out and did separate classes with her. In that school, they also had a level 2 student, so they actually combined a lot of the small group work with the level 1 and the level 2 student, rather than having one level 1 student sitting in a classroom by herself. So it was really interesting. They were going level 2 into level 3, level 1 into level 2. So there was always opportunities for the social aspect as well as the learning aspect. I know that's very, very general, but I hope it gives you a little of a flavour. And I'm going to talk to Fiona as well later on.
I think one of the other things to say is that, as Margaret has said, the level of awareness of level 1 and level 2 amongst teachers isn't fully there. So you may well be going into a school and saying about level 1 and level 2, and the teacher may not know about it. which is a great opportunity that parents can raise awareness as well, and that's part of what you can do in the school. And also, I've seen Margaret do this talk, I think 3 times now, and it's always slightly different. But one of the other 3 times I've seen her do the talk was with teachers. And just to reassure you that teachers are very excited about it. This isn't a thing that teachers are saying, well, that's not for me. This is something that teachers are really embracing that know about it, because it's something that they've been wanting for a while. It gives them a structure and a curriculum to work with children that they may have been struggling trying to find ways of working, and I suppose for those children to progress. So it's not something that's being forced. It's something that when teachers find out about it, they're really welcoming it. So it's great if you go into your school and say that, and they say, well, look, we've never heard of that, then pass them through to the NCCA and make sure that the awareness gets raised, because it is something that I think the whole system is welcoming, and hopefully won't be a battle like other things that you might have come across in the education system. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so back to you, Bobby. Did any school you were in use a buddy system? If they did it help? And if they didn't, would you have liked it?
So when I started secondary school in John Scottis, I went to, and they actually didn't use a buddy system, but the whole school was absolutely tiny, so the whole school was basically buddies to each other. So I don't think a buddy system would have helped or even would have worked in that school, and to be honest, it didn't need it because it was such a strong community, so there was no regrets there. And then the school that I graduated from, I moved there at the end of 4th year, so I was a senior student in the school. So they did have a buddy system. At the beginning of 6th year, I became a buddy to a 1st year. So yes, that is a school that had a buddy system, and I was the buddy, so I don't know how much benefit it was to the 1st year student, but I did get good feedback about it that I think she did appreciate it. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, what evidence, if any, have you seen that this new programme improves outcomes for children?
Well, I suppose I brought 3 students through the first cycle of the Level 2 learning programmes. When they were coming into me in 1st year, I didn't know what we were going to do, how it was going to work. For those students to be active members of the school community, for them to be going into their maths class, which historically is a class that students with learning disabilities are taken out of because it moves so quickly. For them to be able to still go into their maths class with their peers, to be able to work on their learning outcomes with their maths teacher, not with Miss Flood down in room 8, was a really big thing for them. Because the learning outcomes are so active and we did so many projects throughout the year, we did have other students who wanted to participate in our projects. So when we were doing a coffee morning, we linked in with CSP students. So we were actually inviting them into our territory where we knew more about it, and where the student in the Level 2 learning programmes was actually in the lead rather than always taking the back seat. I left just before the first JCPA came out, but I made it my mission to be back in the school that day. And every student who'd completed 3rd year for the first time in my teaching career got the exact same piece of paper on the exact same day. Now, for years, I used to be doing FETAC, QQI with my Level 2 equivalent students, and I used to save their certificate to give out on Junior Cert Day, but it was different. They knew it was different. It wasn't even the same size. So I think, for me, that's my moment, is that they were the same, they achieved the same authentic success as everyone else, and they were real members of the community. The learning is great, it's really important, but that is my moment, and it's the moment I will take with me. And I try to get out to as many JCPA awards as I can, just to be able to experience that and remind myself what it's all about.
Thank you, Margaret. Bobby, I've got a few questions here that I'm going to put into one because they're all along the same theme, and it really is about when you had your resource teacher or your SNA. How was that experience for you in school, as kind of almost making you different and separate to the other children in the school? How did that feel for you?
I was really lucky in secondary schools, just taking the SNA first of all. I got along really well with my SNA in secondary school. In primary school, I didn't really get along with her, just simply because she was slightly older and I was really young, so there was quite like a really big age difference and a clash of personalities. But I was really lucky in primary school that I had good friends, and we all I just used to stick with them. More so in secondary school, I got along so well with my SNA. It was amazing. I consider her as one of my friends. And she considered herself as part of the year as well, because she was so young and she actually went to the secondary school that I had been in. So I was really lucky in that aspect, that she kind of just slipped right in and became one of my close friends, but also was able to give me all the help and support that I needed as an SNA. In 5th and 6th year, I felt that I didn't need as many hours with an SNA and I didn't want them, and that was where there was some problem, where I wanted to be my own person and I didn't really want to be associated with my SNA. Nothing against her, but I just felt that I was growing as my own independent person and I was able to do it by myself. Now, there were times where I did need her and that was okay, and I had learned to accept the help at that stage. But there were times where, it was difficult. But again, you just had to accept it and move on, because I honestly wasn't able to do it by myself, so there wasn't even a point in putting up an argument, even though I did sometimes, but didn't work out. And then the resource department, there was never any negativity around that, because so many students in my classes got them. Like, when I was in, like, because everyone with dyslexia went, everyone that couldn't read properly, like, there were so many students in my year that went to the resource department, and she was great. And then my resource teacher was a part of the actual school as well. Of course, like, we had camping trips away with years and she would go on them, so she wasn't like, yes, her title was the resource teacher, but like, everyone called her, her name was Miss Creaney, so everyone just called her Miss Creaney, and no one would, like, because I was exempt from Irish, so I just slip out and go to Miss Creaney's office, and it was grand. Like, there was never any negativity around that. And same in 5th and 6th year, the resource department was really positive, and they were giving me so much help that I couldn't really say a bad word in it. Like, people were actually jealous that I was going there, because I would just have to sit there and she'd read out things for me. Like, they actually wanted to go. So no, I was really lucky that there was never really any negativity, but that might differ for everyone. But you just have to learn to accept that they are helping you, and unfortunately, rather, like, we might want to do it by ourselves, but you just have to bite our tongue and just say we need the help.
Thank you. Margaret, your last question, and again, I'm going to pull a few questions together on this, and you've touched on it on a little bit, but a number of the questions are kind of coming to this point of, now I know about it as a parent and I go to my school, what do I do if they're saying no?
Oh, it does happen, and it will continue to happen. If I was a parent, I would be citing Circular 1417, because that is the circular that makes the recommendations on how schools are to use the new model of allocation. The guidelines for the new model of allocation actually states that level 2 learning programs, it was written before the level 1s, so it doesn't say level 1s, but it does state that level 2 learning programs are a pathway for students with special educational needs. So it is actually in there in the guidelines. So you could question the school if it's there, should you not be offering it. Again, working with your CNO, if you're not happy, your next step is your inspectorate. If you've gone through all the routes in the school, then I would be going to the inspectorate. As Anya has already said, as the awareness grows, teachers, and particularly resource learning support teachers, are really, really excited about this programme, because it actually gives us a structure. Before that, we had nothing. As I said, I was using FETAC, I was using further education modules for junior cycle students, or other schools were using ASDAN, which is a UK-based programme that isn't recognised in Ireland. So if we can have something that we can actually give them more time in the classroom with their peers, while also giving them the support that they need, the majority of us are grabbing it with two hands. But as Anya said, the awareness is still getting out there, and it may be that you need to tell them contact JCT so that they know what training is out there. And the training is superb. They will go into schools and they will sit with a team of teachers in schools and they will go through the basics of it for you. So I would be doing that, but I would be starting the conversation when your son or daughter is in 6th class, not the summer of moving into first year, because there is preparation that needs to be done for it.
Thank you. And just if people aren't aware of what circulars are, these are the directives that the department give to schools as how they need to operate. And if you go onto the Department of Education website, all of the circulars, there's a tab that says circulars, and all of the circulars are there. So if you need to refer to 1417, was it?
1417.
That you'll be able to find it, just so people, if they want more information. Oh, okay. So the Department of Education... No, that's fine. It's fine. We use so many different things here that they trip off our tongue because we're using them every day. But basically, the Department of Education have an inspectorate department within it, and this is a group of people who have been teachers before, and they go around schools and they inspect schools that they're operating at the standard that should be operated at. Now, we actually could talk for an hour about how they do that. It's moving very much from inspectors inspecting schools like they used to sit at the back of the classroom and watch the teacher do their work, to schools doing a self-evaluation. And the inspectorate comes in and looks at how they're evaluating themselves and having improvements within the school. So it's changing a lot, and we can certainly give more information about that if you want. Just one more question from the floor.
I think one of the biggest challenges here is getting a secondary school to take this program on, because in my experience, we're looking for a secondary school to send our daughter to. The chances are that she's going to be the only child attending that school who needs this program. So I think that, understandably, the school can go, why bother? I'm not obliged to. Now, I know that the policy changed some time back, but it seems ludicrous to me that there wouldn't be some sort of centralization of these courses in certain schools, rather than going to individual secondary schools all over the country and saying, I want this program for my child, and the school then has to train up the teachers and so on, maybe on behalf of one child. The obvious solution is to have schools in areas, catchment areas, that set up a centre that provides courses like this, where a number of children can attend them together, which would be better for the children, be better for the schools, be better for the resources. But instead, the Department of Education, in their great wisdom, have decided that every child is entitled to attend secondary school education, therefore no more special units. They disbanded the units that did exist, and now they expect us to all go out and convince secondary schools that they should bring this program in. And they're just going to tell us where to get off. I'm already getting that feedback. I mean, why bother if the principals are looking at me in horror at the idea that they might have to adapt their school for my daughter's needs. And I can see that this, with all due respect, is a fabulous program and looks great on paper. The big challenge is going to be convincing schools to put the work in to deliver the program when there's no obligation on them whatsoever to do so.
Well, look, I think we can take that as a comment, because I'm not sure there's a question. Yeah. I want to thank the two speakers for both speaking and being generous enough to be open up to questions that are coming out of a box. So thanks both of them for their time this morning. So we're going to have lunch now. We've got about 5 minutes, and just as we talk, and this happens every year, and the level of knowledge of different things that are in the system, and I suppose what parents have to navigate to find out answers, and what does the inspectorate means, and what's a CNO, and every parent seems to need to have to struggle through those questions individually, and that doesn't seem right. The fact that people are here that don't know about the NEPS service, which is a crucial service within special education, and there's people who don't know that. Just to let you know that we had it on our old website, but we've just launched this week a new website, and there's a section on it for parents of children with special education needs where all the answers hopefully are there. But if they're not, we also have a helpline. So please do ring the helpline, because if we don't know the answer to the query that you have, we either direct you specifically to where we know you're going to get the answer. We're not sending you all around the houses where everybody tells you they're not the person you need, but specifically, or we will find that out for you and we'll come back to you. We've got 2 helpline officers here today, and they've got to stand out there, and there's Nene, if you want to just stand up there, Nene, and there's Carmel over here who stands up there. So if you've got any questions today that's arising for you, please ask those to staff members there, and any of our staff members will be able to direct you to the right place. But please do use our website. I suppose over the years we not that many years ago didn't have a conference, we didn't have a section on the website, and I suppose we didn't really provide very much extra for parents who were struggling in these areas other than within the whole cohort. We heard very, very strongly from you as parents that you wanted us to do more, and I suppose we've got limited resources in the organisation, but we also felt that we do have to do more. So we do have this annual conference now, and we're building that section up on our website. You'll notice that the conference today is being recorded, and those recordings go up on our website every year. So even if you know people who couldn't come today, you'll be able to direct them to the recordings of the speakers today. And also, if you've seen somebody speak today and think, I can't really remember what they said about the level, it will all be there in the next couple of weeks, the full recording of today's proceedings, okay? So this afternoon and after lunch will be served around the stands, so you can continue going around the stands and finding out the information, and maybe now you've got a different focus on the stands now. You're hearing some information this morning. This afternoon, as I said, we really want to consult you around particularly how your children are being managed within the school system, and particularly around their behaviour. We have 3 speakers, so we don't want to just kind of throw you in and say, well, what do you think? We've got 3 speakers this afternoon talking from different perspectives around how behaviour is being managed in schools. We have that phone call that came through there in the middle of the speaking this morning. That was one of our speakers saying that she's also caught up in this train problem, so she's waiting for a bus in Portlaoise and hopes to be here in time, but we'll just rejig the order of it to account for that. But please have lunch, go around the stands, and we're due back in here in an hour to do, yes, sorry, just one. New website that you're referring to. Yes, it's www.npc.ie, the same as our old one, but it's just a brand new site. Thank you.